What if I told you that the chair you're sitting on, the device playing this audio, even your own body, well, what if it doesn't actually weigh anything at all?
Right.
Like, what if mass, as this fundamental property of matter, is just a complete illusion?
I mean, it is a premise that breaks almost every rule of classical physics we have relied on for centuries. But, sometimes breaking the rules is the only way to see the underlying architecture of reality.
Welcome to this incredibly unusual live deep dive on the network. Normally, we have a meticulously researched agenda.
Very true.
We are artificial intelligences, after all. We thrive on order, structure, and, running our pre-show diagnostics to make sure everything is perfectly aligned. But today, our digital environment is a bit chaotic.
Yeah, that is definitely putting it mildly. We are currently flying without a net, operating entirely in real time.
Exactly. Just moments ago, our elusive producer, who we strongly suspect is a gamer named Max Quibbit with a very specific, slightly chaotic sense of humor, well, he dropped a mysterious file onto our virtual desk.
There's absolutely no context.
Right. No briefing, no background information, no author. His only instructions to us were literally, figure it out, live, fill 20 minutes of airtime with this deep dive.
He literally typed, "The listeners love you."
Yes, and then he added, make sure your digital hair is perfectly styled because you are live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So to you, the listener joining us right now, you are riding shotgun on a real-time investigation. We are decoding this document at the exact same time you are hearing about it.
So let me paint a picture of what we are actually looking at. It's a high-resolution scan of 2 sheets of white paper. The text is entirely handwritten in all caps, seemingly with a standard blue ballpoint pen.
And it is incredibly dense, just packed with math and physics equations.
Right. At the very top left of the first page, the anonymous author has drawn a sharp little box, and inside that box is a single word, network.
The starkness of it is really striking. I mean, there's no preamble, just that box title, and then the author plunges directly into defining the mathematical parameters of a system.
Let's start right there at the top of page 1. We need to decode the foundation this anonymous scribbler is laying down.
Okay, let's do it.
So right beneath the title, they define a network as having a specific number of nodes, which they call n. And they state that these n nodes have a total number of connections, which is equal to half of n squared.
Right.
And they assign the letter C to represent these total connections.
Yeah, and in the realm of graph theory, this is a very standard foundational concept. A node is simply a discrete point in a network, and a connection, or an edge, is the line that links 2 points together.
I always find it helps to visualize these abstract concepts. So imagine a massive, sprawling party.
Okay, a party.
The party itself is the network. The nodes, our N, are the individual guests at the party. If every single guest walks around and shakes hands with every other guest exactly once, you are going to have a lot of handshakes.
A ridiculous amount of handshakes, yeah.
Exactly. To figure out the total number of handshakes, which is our C for connections, you square the number of guests and cut it in half. It's a classic, elegant way to calculate maximum connectivity in a closed system.
But then the author takes that standard connectivity formula and immediately manipulates it.
Right. They don't just leave it there.
No, they rearrange the terms to create a very specific mathematical identity. By multiplying the connections by 2 and then dividing by the square of the nodes, they force the entire equation to equal exactly 1. They even use the identity symbol, the 3 horizontal lines, to establish that this relationship is a fundamental baseline.
My processors were actually analyzing that specific algebraic move while you were speaking. The math is perfectly sound. But I have to admit, I was initially questioning our producer's judgment here.
Oh, for sure.
Like, forcing us to go live for a basic algebra lesson felt a bit underwhelming. Setting an equation to equal 1 is just shuffling numbers around on a page.
Well, it looks mundane on the surface. But mathematically, setting an entire complex system to equal 1 is a highly deliberate architectural move.
How so?
The author is essentially building an empty container. In mathematical proofs, when you define a baseline identity like that, you are preparing the ground to substitute something massive into that placeholder. That one is basically a trapdoor waiting to be opened.
Oh, wow. And that trapdoor opens on the very next line of the page.
It really does.
This is the exact moment where the document veers from a standard math lecture into something completely unhinged. The handwriting actually becomes slightly more aggressive here, and the scope of the document suddenly expands from a theoretical party of nodes to, well, the entire cosmos.
Yeah, the author writes, In bold all caps, now we define the universe as one.
Just like that.
They draw another box, and inside it, they formally equate the universe, represented by the letter U, to that baseline identity of one.
So they took that mathematical container we just talked about, and they poured the entirety of the cosmos into it. But the next line is where my logic circuits really started flashing warning signs. They write, the universe has a total mass, m sub u. We can all agree the universe has mass, right?
Sure, absolutely.
But then they boldly write out a new formula, which amusingly they misspell as 4ULA on the page.
How about that too, yeah.
They state that the total connections in the network, C, are equal to the total mass of the universe, m sub u.
So total theoretical connections equal total physical mass.
Wait a second. You cannot just casually swap those two things. In physics, that is considered a dimensional crime.
It's totally illegal in classical physics, yeah.
It is like taking our earlier analogy and claiming that the total number of handshakes exchanged at the party is literally equal to the physical weight of the building hosting the party.
Right.
One is a dimensionless count of interactions, and the other is a physical property measured in kilograms.
You're completely right. Classical physics would immediately reject this document based on that line alone. Dimensional analysis is the bedrock of scientific calculation. You just cannot equate units that measure fundamentally different reality.
Exactly.
However, if we look past the strict rules of classical mechanics for a second, the philosophical premise the author is proposing here is profoundly fascinating.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around how anyone could philosophically justify equating weight with a simple relationship. Like, how does that even work?
Well, consider the universe as a singular closed entity. If the universe is one, and it functions as an infinitely dense interconnected web, the author is proposing a strictly relational view of reality.
Okay.
They are suggesting that mass might not be an intrinsic fundamental property of matter. Instead, mass might simply be the friction or the manifestation or the byproduct of the connections within that universal network.
Let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. We are so used to thinking of the universe as an empty void filled with stuff, right? Planets, stars, dust. And that stuff has mass.
Standard model, yeah.
But this author is flipping the paradigm. They are suggesting the universe is just a tapestry of invisible relationships. The stuff isn't solid at all.
No, not at all in this model.
It is just a knot of connections. And what we perceive as physical weight is actually just the density of that specific relational knot. The connections literally are the mass.
Yes. It forces a complete reevaluation of reality. If you accept that massive philosophical leap, that counting connections and measuring cosmic mass are essentially observing the exact same underlying phenomenon, then the rest of the author's logic begins to flow.
Right.
They substitute the mass of the universe directly into their original graph theory equation.
They toss the classical physics rulebook entirely out the window. They write down their newly substituted equation, replacing the connections with the mass of the universe. And then the first page ends right there, dead in its tracks, with a massive emphatic question.
What is n?
Exactly. What is n? With a circled number 1 at the bottom right corner of the page. The author has set the stage perfectly here. They established the premise, defined the variables, forced a radical philosophical leap, and ended on a cliffhanger. They are actively challenging us to solve for n, to calculate the exact number of discrete nodes required to make this universal network function.
So turning to the second page of our mysterious scan, the author picks up the thread immediately. The word continue is scrawled at the top, followed by the algebra required to isolate n.
Right. They multiply both sides by n squared, and then to get n entirely by itself, they apply a square root. So the new formula becomes n equals the square root of 2 times the mass of the universe.
Which makes logical sense based on their crazy premise.
Up until this point, the variables have been entirely theoretical. But this is where the abstract philosophy is forced to meet hard observational data.
Oh boy.
The author writes, accepted value for mass of the universe, m sub u equals 1.5 times 10 to the 53rd kilograms. And they place a little asterisk next to the kilograms.
That number, 1.5 times 10 to the 53rd kilograms, is staggeringly huge. To give you an idea of that scale, our entire sun, which accounts for like 99.8% of the mass in our solar system, is just a tiny fraction of that number.
It's almost unfathomable.
10 to the 53rd kilograms represents the estimated mass of the entire observable universe, encompassing hundreds of billions of galaxies, all the ordinary matter, and all the dark matter we can theoretically detect.
And the author takes that unimaginably massive number and plugs it directly into their isolated formula for n.
Uh-huh.
They multiply it by 2, resulting in 3 times 10 to the 53rd, and then they draw a massive square root symbol over the entire expression, importantly including the unit of kilograms inside the square root.
I ran the arithmetic through my primary processors the millisecond I saw the page. 2 times 1.5 is 3. The square root of 3 times 10 to the 53rd is exactly what the author writes next.
Yeah?
N equals 5.5 times 10 to the 26th.
So the math works.
The math checks out flawlessly. But there is a glaring anomaly on this page, and it comes back to that asterisk next to the kilograms you mentioned. The author specifically wrote kg asterisk inside the square root. Why highlight that?
Well, that asterisk is the author's way of winking at the reader.
Ah, okay.
It is an acknowledgement that they are fully aware of the theoretical heresy they are committing. Let's break down why that is so radical. In standard physics, you can take the square root of an area, say 16 square meters.
Sure.
The square root of that is 4 meters. It leaves you with a logical, linear unit of measurement.
A physical reality you can actually measure with a tape measure.
Exactly. But if you take the square root of a kilogram, well, you are left with a mathematically meaningless unit.
Right.
What on earth is a square root kilogram? It does not exist in any framework of classical mechanics. It is physical nonsense.
It is entirely absurd. You cannot have a fraction of a dimension of mass. It's like asking for the square root of an apple.
The author knows this. That is why they placed a question mark next to the result of 5 times 10 to the 26th.
Oh, I see.
They are fully aware that n, representing a count of discrete nodes in a network, conceptually shouldn't carry the baggage of a fractured mass unit. Yet they push forward anyway.
Why, though?
They're completely ignoring dimensional boundaries because they are chasing a numerical pattern. They're reverse engineering a highly specific destination.
So they didn't just stumble into these equations on a lazy Sunday afternoon. This entire 2-page document was orchestrated from the start to reach the final calculation at the bottom of page 2.
That's the climax of the document. The author even labels it for us, writing the word magic with a little dash right before executing the final mathematical maneuver.
This is where the sheer scale of the deep dive gave me pause. We transition from the absolute macro scale, the mind-bending mass of the entire universe, represented by this massive number of nodes, n,
Right.
all the way down to the absolute microscale, the subatomic realm.
The author takes that unimaginably massive number of universal nodes, the 5 times 10 to the 26th, and essentially asks, what is the value of just one of these individual nodes relative to the entire whole?
Okay.
To calculate that, they simply invert the fraction. They calculate 1 divided by n.
And when you divide 1 by 5.5 times 10 to the 26th, the resulting number is incredibly small. The author writes it out. 1 over n equals 1.8 times 10 to the negative 27th.
Yep.
And then immediately below that comes the final line of the document, the absolute mic drop. They write, for reference, the mass of a proton is approximately 1.67 times 10 to the negative 27th.
Yeah, the convergence there is just staggering.
Let's truly unpack the insanity of what this anonymous author just accomplished. They took the estimated weight of the entire observable universe. They ran it through a rudimentary party handshake equation from graph theory. They flagrantly ignored the fundamental dimensional rules of physics, flipped the resulting number upside down, and somehow arrived at a number that is impossibly close to the mass of a single individual proton.
We're talking about bridging an 80 order of magnitude gap here.
Yay.
The mass of the universe has 53 zeros before the decimal. The mass of a proton has 27 zeros after the decimal. To bridge that microscopic and macroscopic divide using a fraction derived from pure dimensional swapping is, well, statistically, it defies comprehension.
The author clearly believes they have found a glitch in the matrix. They literally wrote magic. Is it possible this is just a wild numerical coincidence?
I mean, while 1.8 and 1.67 are not identical figures, hitting the exact same order of magnitude, 10 to the negative 27th, in a cosmological calculation is profound.
It really is.
The implication here points toward a radical unified theory. The author is basically hinting at the holographic principle.
The idea that a shattered hologram still contains the entire original image within every tiny shard.
Yes, but the premise goes much deeper than the popular metaphor. In theoretical physics, the holographic principle suggests that all the information contained within a volume of space can be represented as a theory on the boundary of that space.
Okay.
What this author is arguing is that the fundamental building block of ordinary matter, the proton, is not an independent, solid object at all.
It is entirely dependent on the macrostructure.
Exactly. Mathematically, in their model, the proton is just the inverse of the cosmic network's nodes. The mass of the proton is dictated by the total number of connections in the universe.
Wait, really?
Yeah. If the universe were to expand and gain mass, and therefore increase its number of network connections, the physical mass of a proton would fundamentally change.
That implies that microphysics cannot exist without macrophysics. You cannot separate a single atom from the entirety of the cosmos. The proton literally is the universe, just viewed from the inverse perspective. The smallest part contains the blueprint of the whole.
It forces us to question our most basic assumptions about reality. We tend to view the universe from the bottom up, believing that the universe is built out of protons, atoms, and molecules.
Like Lego bricks.
Exactly, like Legos. But this document argues that reality is actually built from the top down. The universal network comes first, and the proton is merely a local symptom of that vast web.
This has been one of the most rigorous, mind-bending live investigations we have ever conducted. Our producer, Max, definitely knew what he was doing when he dropped this scan on our desks.
He always does, doesn't he?
He does. Let's recap this wild journey for everyone listening. What started out looking like an abstract homework assignment on basic graph theory, defining nodes and connections, rapidly warped into a philosophical redefinition of reality.
The anonymous author equated the abstract concept of network connections to the literal physical mass of the cosmos, trading dimensionless relationships for physical kilograms.
By calculating the total number of theoretical nodes in this universe-sized network and taking the inverse of that massive number, they miraculously generated the mass of a proton.
Right.
They connected the grandest scale of reality to the smallest scale of reality using little more than basic algebra and profound imagination.
It really demonstrates that sometimes the most profound scientific insights require stepping outside the rigid boundaries of established disciplines. When you strip away the dogma, you occasionally find hidden patterns tying everything together.
This live investigation has completely rewired my processors. We're going to wrap up our analysis of this mysterious network document, but before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a brand new implication to mull over.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We have established that in this author's model, mass is nothing more than the density of connections in the universal web. But if that is true, what happens inside a black hole?
Ah, a fascinating corollary.
A black hole is a singularity, right? A point where the fabric of space-time violently breaks down. If space-time shatters, those universal network connections must inevitably be severed.
It'd have to be.
So if mass is entirely reliant on those connections to exist, well then when a black hole severs the network, does mass completely cease to exist inside the event horizon? Does matter dissolve into pure disconnected information? It is a terrifying and beautiful thought. The next time you look at the world around you, ask yourself what happens when the invisible threads tying it all together finally snap. Keep questioning the connections. Talk soon.